March 2025. A month where 5 individuals met their fate through the execution chamber. Their stories are not just about punishment, but the crimes that led them there. These are tales of brutality, betrayal, and lives forever altered by one catastrophic decision. Today we take you into the dark history of Brad Keith Sigmon, Jessie Hoffman, Gunches, Wendell Grissom, and Edward Thomas James. What choices led them to a death sentence? What crimes turned them into names etched in the annals of criminal justice? Join us as we explore their crimes, their final meals, and their last words. Brad Keith Sigmon's name is forever linked to one of the most brutal murders in North Carolina's history. In 1997, Sigmon, along with his accomplice, planned a robbery at the home of an elderly couple, Ronald and Patricia Lutz. What was meant to be a simple theft escalated into something far darker. Sigmon tied up the elderly couple, ransacked their home, and then took their lives, leaving them to die in a pool of their own blood. Sigmon's motive was money, but his crime was far more than robbery. It was a savage act, calculated and callous. He was arrested, tried, and sentenced to death in 1998, despite attempts to claim his innocence. On March 1, 2025, Brad Keith Sigmon met his end by lethal injection. His last meal request was humble, a cheeseburger and fries, the food of a man seemingly unrepentant. His last words, however, were starkly different. Looking into the eyes of those who witnessed his execution, Sigmon whispered, "I'm sorry. I really am."
This is a day Gunches has been asking for more than a decade, even accusing the state of pointless foot dragging. Wednesday, Gunches was put to death.
Gunches' crime was cold and premeditated. In 2005, Aaron murdered his neighbor, James Walters, during a robbery. The attack was violent and senseless. What was meant to be a simple heist turned into a brutal slaying. Aaron shot James in cold blood, taking his life without hesitation. His execution came after years of legal battles, but his fate was sealed after his conviction. Aaron's crime was marked by a complete lack of remorse, a life taken for the sake of money. It was a brutal reminder of the lengths some will go for greed. For his final meal, Aaron requested his mother's homemade chili with cornbread, a stark reminder of better times before his life was defined by crime. But when asked if he had any final words, Aaron's response was chilling in its acceptance of his fate. "I'm not afraid of dying. I deserve this, and I know it." Gunches died by lethal injection on March 15, 2025.
Happening today, a death row inmate will make his case for clemency.
Wendell Grissom was convicted of murder after he shot and killed a woman during a home break-in.
Wendell Grissom's crime was one of domestic violence and rage. In 1996, Wendell brutally murdered his wife, Margaret, after a heated argument. What began as a domestic dispute turned into a violent act of brutality. Wendell used a blunt object, striking his wife repeatedly, leaving her bloodied and lifeless. Many who knew Wendell were shocked by the crime. He had a history of violent outbursts, but nothing that could have predicted the horrific outcome. Despite a troubled past, no one saw the violence that would come. Wendell was convicted in 1999, and after years of appeals, his death sentence was upheld. For his final meal, Wendell requested a fried chicken dinner with mashed potatoes and gravy, a simple meal that perhaps offered him comfort in his final hours. His last words were heartbreaking. "I'm sorry, Margaret. I can't take back what I did. I hope you can forgive me." Edward Thomas James's crime was one of cold-blooded robbery and murder. In 1992, Edward murdered Sally Johnson, a store clerk, during a robbery. He shot her in the head, execution style, after she had complied with his demands for money. The murder was senseless, the crime horrifying. Edward had no remorse for his actions. The shooting was unprovoked, and his motive was simply greed. His case was marked by his indifference to the pain he caused. He was convicted in 1993, and after numerous appeals, His execution was scheduled for March 25, 2025. Edward's last meal was a pizza, a simple reminder of his life before his actions took a dark turn. When asked if he had any final words, Edward's response was short but filled with regret. "I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I hope Sally's family can find peace." With that, Edward Thomas James was executed, his story now a part of the tragic cycle of crime and punishment. 5 individuals, 5 tragic crimes. A story of lives marked by violence, jealousy, greed, and rage. Their actions led to irreversible consequences. As we reflect on their final moments, we are reminded that crime leaves scars that extend far beyond the individual. It impacts families, communities, and entire societies. We must never forget the lives lost, the victims who can no longer speak, and the families left behind. March 2025 will be remembered for the stories of these 5 individuals. Their fate was sealed by their own actions, but it is the stories of the victims that will live on in our hearts. May we remember them, and may justice continue to shape the future.